And I feel like a clean-up hitter, the last man up to bat after so many inspirational and eloquent speakers. And it's very fitting that Glenn talked about stories, because my presentation and how the Forum for Cities for Transition came into being is a story about stories. And it starts with work I had done in Northern Ireland, South Africa, Sri Lanka and Iraq, recognizing that in all these deeply divided societies, even though the conflicts were different, the behavioral attitudes of the people in each of these societies were the same. They shared certain common characteristics that people in normal societies did not face. One of those being that people in divided societies, on every level, all suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They're all sick. And that sickness doesn't just go through one generation. It goes from one generation to the next, and mostly goes unrecognized and untreated. So with the idea that people from divided cities shared common characteristics, common behavioral traits, my university, along with my colleagues Alan here and Oliver Quinton, invited 5 of them to come to Boston. And all they had to do was bring delegations that were equally balanced. Every side that was in the conflict had to be represented. And when they came, they all came into the room on the first day and they said, okay, we sat down, they said, where's the agenda? We said, there is no agenda. All you have to do is sit around this table and each of you, from your own perspective, tell us the narrative of your conflict as you saw it through your eyes. And if at the end of you all hearing each other, you say, so what? Big deal. Then here's the ticket back to the airport and you can go home. On the other hand, if you find that you are identifying with what people in the other cities are saying, when you see somebody from Mitrovica saying something, and somebody from London Derry starts nodding his head and saying, yes, those words could be coming out of my mouth, that's the point you know that the cities are beginning to identify with each other, to bond with each other, that they have a specialness that cities outside in the Norman realms of society do not share. So they all shared their narratives, and all of them immediately said, we're all saying the same thing in different ways. So we said, well, if you believe that, why don't all of you form an organization in which you would help each other further reconciliation processes in your own cities and help other cities lower down in the process of transition on to a higher level. So the simplest idea behind the forum is that one divided society or one divided city is in the best position to help another. And on that principle, we have brought people together from, let me see now, we're entering our 5th year. And we have a membership of Belfast, Derry, London, Derry, Nicosia, Mitrovica, Sarajevo, Mostar, Srebrenica, Tripoli in Lebanon, Baghdad, Kirkuk, Jerusalem, East and West, Ramallah, Kaduna in Nigeria, Mita in Germany. Mita because it's got the highest concentration of ethnic Turks of any place in Germany. Haifa and Beirut at one time, and Ramallah. You might say, why Ramallah? Well, for a particular reason. Now, one day we believe that those walls are going to fall, and Ramallah and Jerusalem are going to be communicating with each other and working with each other. And why not start right now building bridges across that divide? Each city, at the end of the conference, and there's tremendous interaction, at least 5 different languages, 5 different sets of interpreters. We've innumerable workshops. Our days are 12 to 13 hours long. There are no breaks, no kind of sightseeing or anything of that sort. It's work. And the thing is, people would always say, well, your agenda is too long. But the thing is that once people get into talking to each other from different places and sharing how they deal with common problems, they don't want a break. I have a problem and I'm dealing with it in a certain way, and it's not working. And somebody else from another city says, well, do you know what, we have the same kind of problem, but we look at the problem and we deal with it this way. And maybe you could adapt the way we use and see how it works in your city. And you could come back and tell us whether or not it works. Or we can be in communication with each other, or we can visit each other to see whether it does or doesn't work. And the issues we deal with, or what's been talked about here today, are issues at the most basic level. Water, sewage, housing, electricity, the equality of the delivery of services, the people at the lower rungs of the cities they live in, because it is the people at the lower rungs of the cities who usually have done the fighting in conflicts. In intrastate conflicts, you find few people in the middle and upper classes who are fighting each other. You'll find that there's people at the bottom. In Northern Ireland, it's been the working class Catholics, working class Protestants. And today, while the middle and upper classes have moved on and talk about the way they've gone into reconciliation, many of those in both communities, Catholic and Protestant, feel left out of the process. And this is true of all the cities. At the end of each conference, and we tell them at the beginning of the conference, you have to design a project that will either further reconciliation in your own city or help another city that is lower down on the ladder of transition and needs some help. And at the end of the conference, you will stand up and you will make a commitment to carry out that project before the following year's conference. Now, any city that does not carry out its commitment for 2 consecutive years, we throw them out. They're really not serious. They're coming for the ride. They're really not serious about the business we're in. So each conference is linked into the next. And I'll just give you 2 examples of the kind of projects that work. In Mitrovica, you've got Serbian police and you've got Kosovo police. They're supposed to be in the same police force. They're not. It's completely dysfunctional. In our first conference in Mitrovica, the poorest of all the cities insisted on holding the first conference. Luckily enough, from Northern Ireland, we had 2 of the people present who were instrumental as part of a team that took apart the old police force in Northern Ireland called the Royal Ulster Constabulary, 95% Protestant, which had been oppressive to Catholics since 1920, which had the power to arrest and detain people indefinitely, which were throughout all the 30 years of conflict a target of the IRA. And if you were a member, if you were a Catholic and you were a member of that police force, you were a dead person. So we said that police force has got to be torn apart and restructured so that it is acceptable to both communities. So these 2 gentlemen said, we will take a team of 10 Kosovar officers and 10 Serbian officers, and we bring them to Belfast for a month. We put them through an intensive training course of how you rebuild a police force that is functional. Now that began 5 years ago. That program is still going. Still going. And the other one refers to Jerusalem. You know, I went to Jerusalem first. I saw the mayor, it's the deputy mayor, and she said, well, Jerusalem is not a divided city. It's one city. So we got around that by saying, well, you're in some form of transition, so you can find a way in the back door if you really want to. And they did. And we had representation from West Jerusalem and East Jerusalem. 2 people from the municipality from West, 2 people from NGOs in the East. Their working relationships were absolutely awful. And over a week in Mitrovica, they worked out what were essentially personal problems. And they made a commitment. And their commitment was, in East Jerusalem, many of the streets have no street names. So that residents of East Jerusalem can't get their mail delivered. They have to go downtown. They have to go into West Jerusalem where they don't want to go. And the people in the municipality said, we will make it our project to try to get a project underway in the municipality that will start putting street signs up, and that will establish a sub-post office in East Jerusalem. And 2 years later, that project was completed. So you have people who were totally antagonistic to each other in the beginning, who were able to take on something that nobody thought they could accomplish. So each working with the other, the sum of people who share similar problems, working with each other to solve these problems or to commit themselves to projects together, is synergistic. Reconciliation is better. So the center point of the forum is that each year, each city in rotation has to host all the other cities. And the host city has to show where it once was in terms of its conflict, where it is to go, where it is today, and how far it has to go before it reaches some form of quote-unquote normalcy. And through the sharing of that experience, all the other cities take that as the focal point of the discussion for the week and work with each other on the problems associated with that city, which invariably morph over into their own problems. So this year, our 5th year, we are holding the conference in Belfast with the 15 cities from the 27th to the 30th of October. And I must say that every problem I've heard around this table has had a bearing on some aspect of the work we do. And we extend an invitation to the mayors of all the cities to send representatives to the conference this year. Thank you.